talk about things of depth. You ask questions. You care for one another. Then it's the colleagues, I believe, in your workplace. Are you showing up and asking questions beyond just work? Is there unstructured spaces in your work? That third place type attitude in the workplace? I'm intrigued with that. I was at IBM Research 2 days ago. And the digital restrictions on talking to one another is incredible within the space of restrictions. And then I show up with this display of coffee, cold brew, oolong tea, goodies. And it's amazing how people start connecting with one another and getting to know one another. These are people that are deep sea fishing on what kind of buildings are out there, and city planning, pharma, research in many different demographic areas. And so a common denominator of coffee and goodies and just talking to one another about deeper things really was like magic 2 days ago. And I also believe in the world. Like showing up, Boya introduced me to his book, Being Black in America, and what it's like from an African perspective coming here. My friend Francois from Rwanda, who I'm highlighting the coffee today, I met out in Seattle, and now we're good friends, and the ripple effect is going back to Rwanda, southwest Rwanda, his farms, and helping his family farms. He was a Tutsi, and his family was devastated during the time of the genocide against the Tutsis. And he has an incredible story of hope. So I wouldn't realize that vast reach of community building if it didn't start with me showing up and seeing the disconnect in me and wanting to be right inside of me. And then seeing the profit-saturated, directed world that was commoditizing people that I participated in. So I was like Mount Vesuvius in 2015. I was on a mission to cultivate community in a way that really engaged from another perspective. So today, what I enjoy is at the coffee bar. I was talking with Suzanne, who came up to the coffee bar in Beverly. And during pandemic, I would be outside on the curb with my mask on, talking with people, greeting people one by one, working with some of the universities and some of the companies here doing digital type community building. And the other thing beyond being at the coffee bar that I enjoy chatting with people is here at CIC and other places. Over here we have a coffee clutch, and I just so enjoy hanging out and talking with people and building community. One of my aspirations, as Sophia was kind of pointing me toward, is to create this old world hospitality in our fast-paced, data-driven world. A way for us to connect with art, history, science, kind of like a library in our own digital age. How we can have a super local impact. There's a word called subsidiarity. It means being effective at the most basic level. And I might back it beyond just a location to myself again. But I think if we are effective right where we're at, right where we're planted, we talk about touch, why not start right where we're planted? Right where we're planted. And sometimes it's reaching backwards. I have a friend from Sweden here, and we talk often about my grandfather from Sweden. Going back to my grandfather's farm in Offerdal, Jämtland, and with my feet on the ground where he grew up. Going in the water where he went in. Going into where the cold storage where the potatoes were stored. It roots me. It gives me energy to go forward. I don't want to go back to the good old days. I don't want to go back to Vienna, Constantinople, or Lloyd's of London where it started in a coffee shop. I want to bring some of those principles to our new world, our world today, and how we can connect in genuine ways. So today, I would love this to be a catalyst for all of us, me included. And I really believe in hospitality being mutual. We don't show up, sit at a table with fancy china and be waited on necessarily, but we show up together and impact each other together. Conversation in a really profound way can be a display of character, right? Or your walk, it's how you deploy yourself. So why don't we have a conversation today in a way that is not just transference of information, or when I'm doing pour over bar, like my coffee from this matter to that matter, and we can talk about science of that. It's 1,000 different identifiable compounds, more complex than wine. And the smells and the tastes are so dynamic. No wonder I'm so enamored with a cup of coffee every morning, starting my day. But let's talk about transference of matter within people in a way that impacts one another, leaves each other in a better spot. How many podcasts have we heard where the speaker, interviewer is talking too much and we don't even hear the person being interviewed? Or we don't hear best versions of one another. We hear all the extra stuff that is hard to understand. We don't hear framework where we can listen to somebody in a really helpful way and be encouraged. When we leave a conversation, isn't it wonderful when we leave better than when we started? Isn't it fun to be surprised by joy in the midst of discovering who one another is? So Sophia suggested today that we might do a little exercise and work with maybe twos, maybe threes, and I can help facilitate this a bit, and not to go too long, but my thought would be, as I have done at Impact Hub Boston for about 4 or 5 years, every Friday before pandemic, we would have civil discourse type thing in the workplace. So I really believe that we can have genuine connections in the workplace and talk about everything. The only thing is, it's first person. It's like your story. So the framework would be for, if you feel comfortable, to pair off or in threes and to say top of mind. I always find top of mind type gets things off my mind so I can talk about other things. So when I say top of mind, for me, it's like, oh, I was rushing this morning. Oh, I woke up at 2 a.m. and I was a little bit nervous for today. Or I'm a little bit honest. And when I'm a little bit honest, then all of a sudden, then there's freedom to talk about things that I can listen to and listen to the other person's heartbeat and find things that really matter. So a top of mind question, ask one another, go around, what is your top of mind? That's just a popcorn type thing, quick. And then secondly, tell me about an experience you've had recently where it was just a conversation that kind of exported you and it just flowed, just went. So that would be a quick question. Say, for me, I met somebody that was new to CIC yesterday, and we started talking, and we ended up talking about mental health, and all of a sudden, then we saw each other through the day, and it was just, I gained a new friend yesterday, and I introduced that friend with a few other people, and that friend and I have now started a deeper connection. So I felt heard, I felt cared for, I felt encouraged, and it was wonderful. So that was my experience of meeting a recent meeting and having a recent conversation with someone. And then thirdly, I think how you felt. I think it's good to see how we feel. So that connects us with our emotions, with more core thinking. So number one, top of mind, just top of mind. And the core thing of the whole conversation is, did you meet somebody recently and have a wonderful conversation? Could happen just today. Tell me about it. What was it like? And then thirdly, how did it make you feel? So Sophia, can you help us arrange? And then we'll reconvene and see what people came up with.
All right, so if you look around you in groups of 2 or 3, like I see some folks in the corner, so feel free to like shift or move a little bit. Look around you, make sure there's nobody who is left out, I guess. So do the small invitations to one another. And if you're sitting in a corner and you know maybe you can't be seen, then just step forward a little bit. Yeah, groups of 4 work as well. I think no bigger than 4. I think that's too big. But if you want to meet someone new as well, just step away from the people you already know. The first was top of mind. I'm going to hand it back over to Erik to wrap up. But I'm not going to lie, I almost like broke out into tears. Anybody else have like really like deep connection here? And like it was only a few minutes, but I think it really does get to the heart of things. So I'm going to thank you all for participating. I'm going to hand it over to Erik, okay?
So it feels good in a story to have a real story that's fresh, doesn't it? We heard so many stories in life that's cut and paste, right? Marketing, in the design world, there's so much cut and paste thinking. And isn't it wonderful when we can riff out loud with one another? It builds trust, doesn't it? One of my favorite metaphors for that kind of thing is Miles Davis and Coltrane showing up in the late 50s and really changing the jazz world. And I love listening to cool jazz. And I think there's something about riffing, showing up, I believe, in a humble way, where you're really listening to one another. So it's magnificent for me to witness conversations going on in the room where we're top of mind. Secondly, we are listening to each other's stories intently. And thirdly, we're asking a question of how does that make you feel? It helps us, doesn't it? Helps us to move, helps us to add value to what we're talking about. So I want to wrap up, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I would love for the conversations to continue. We go to many talks in life. We attend many lectures. There's so many talks. In fact, it's growing all the time. And I think one of the things we can do in a talk is to be fresh, and is to be open, and is to show up in a way that you're really connecting with one another so that we can take something away from this place. And this isn't like an outline that people give out after a lecture at one of the universities. But this is a principle that might transcend this space and time. And I believe everybody's appointed for this space and time with purpose. And we'll continue to show up if we have purpose. So my encouragement to all of us is to have a sense of presence as you go out of this place. Be present for one another. Think about ways that you can hear that person. And as my friend Boya says, have words that matter. In Africa, Somalia, they greet one another with poetry. They greet one another differently than just a pedantic hello or something. Or how are you doing? So maybe we go from this place in a way that we're asking questions that really are wanting to know who that person is rather than who they are. I mean, get to know who they are rather than what they do.
Right.
So much we look at a script and we have this question, and that question leads into this, this, and this. How about showing up with an unscripted question that just is opening up the other person in a way that you want to continue that conversation? It may not happen and be completed then, but it will create a want. And the definition of want is not just desire, but it's a lack thereof. So may we think differently as we leave here. May we feel in a way that is really wanting to feel empathetic, not only for others, but for ourselves, for our colleagues, wanting to know the backstory in our colleagues, our world. Be concerned with our world.